Fala, meus queridos, tudo bem com vocês? Vinicius Veiga por aqui, começando mais um Conversas em Apostas. E agora o nosso segundo convidado em inglês. Esse episódio vai ser totalmente legendado para vocês aqui, portanto, eu creio que a nossa tradução seja fiel a tudo que o VARUN vai explicar para a gente. Vou fazer um pequeno background aqui dele, do nosso convidado de hoje, antes de passar a palavra para ele. Basicamente, o VARUN ele é CEO da BetDex, uma das exchanges que estão chegando para o Brasil, uma exchange muito famosa no mercado norte-americano que está entrando para o mercado brasileiro. Então é uma honra estar recebendo alguém com um cargo tão alto assim, de uma exchange tão relevante assim para nós. Portanto, é isso. Espero que vocês gostem da conversa. A gente vai falar bastante sobre o mercado regulatório, vão falar sobre o mundo das exchanges e vão falar sobre quais são as expectativas da BetDex aqui no mercado nacional brasileiro, ok? Então vamos lá, meus queridos, vou começar aqui a nossa conversa com o VARUN. VARUN, first of all, thanks for being here. It's an honor to receive you here, a guy that has a lot of experience on the market, and you are the CEO of BetDex. So first of all, tell us a little bit about your background in sports betting and the gambling sector in general.
So thank you for having me on this podcast. So as you mentioned, yes, I'm Varun. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders here at BetDex. As it relates to the gambling industry, so I've been on a personal basis, I like to place bets. Probably been gambling since college just for fun. But on a professional basis, I actually started my career back in 2015 in the gaming industry at FanDuel here in the US. At that time, FanDuel only offered daily fantasy sports. And so that's when I joined the company. I was there for about 3 years. And during that time, we, due to some legislative changes, we actually ended up transitioning the company to being able to offer sports betting, iGaming, casino, a number of other products as well. We sold that company to Flutter, which is, or to Paddy Power Betfair, which is now known as Flutter Entertainment. I left after the post the merger. I actually left the gaming industry, worked in a few different early stage startups, not related to gaming or gambling. Then came back to the industry back in 2021 when I started BetDex with a few of my former colleagues.
So you say that you started to betting on your high school days. So that was probably about 10, 15 years ago, right?
Yes.
So how the market changed from that time to now in the US? We know that a lot of legislation changes over the period. And how much the market changed over the last 10 to 15 years in US market as a global?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, before 2018, sports betting was only legal in a very few select states in the US. So when you were, if you wanted to go and place a bet, you had to go to an offshore site such as Bovada or one of these other sites, or you had to go and use a bookie. That it was actually quite widespread and quite prevalent. That everyone was doing it. It was just kind of a way of life, if you will. But that's how you had to go and get your bet on, right? And the way that the bookies, especially like a lot of them operate, is quite interesting. It's on a credit system, right? So you get a credit balance, and then you go and you place bets with that, and then you settle up at the end of every week, every month, whatever it might be. And then as legislation changed and as sports betting has become a lot more popular, not necessarily more popular, but I think as it's become more legalized, what you've seen is a lot more companies coming in and offering much more slicker products, right? But there's obviously a lot more regulation around it, so there's a lot more KYC, AML restrictions, but they're offering these mobile apps, and they put a lot of marketing dollars and a lot of development dollars into it, right? So now you can bet on FanDuel, you can bet on DraftKings, you can bet on BetMGM, Caesars, etc. It depends on which state you're in, but you can do that. So the app it's much better than what you would see on like a local bookie's website or something like that. They're able to give you much bigger bonuses, I would say, especially if you're much more of a recreational bettor. They can offer much better products in terms of same game parlays, things like that. But there is a hurdle to go, and you have to KYC, you have to register to go use the application. I actually don't think that it's the people have always asked, like, does this mean like the depth of the kind of the bookies and the unregulated markets in the US? I actually don't think that's the case. I think that they will both continue to symbiotically exist. And I've even heard some people say in some ways the companies like FanDuel, DraftKings serve as an affiliate into the black market. But that's how it's changed. I think the amount of options you have to bet on are a lot wider now.
So as you said, the competition inside the US market is so much huge now than 5 years ago, right? So when you started the BetDex, how is to face against major companies like FanDuel, like DraftKings? How is the challenge for you guys? I know that BetDex is a huge company. You are amazing, but you have some other huge companies as well in the US market that you need to face against, right?
Yes, yeah, it's a great question. So I think it might make sense to first explain what BetDex is. So we're a sports betting exchange, right? We're not a bookie. So what that means is it's more similar to a Betfair.
Yes.
Second thing is we are actually focused on international markets. We don't actually operate in the US.
Yeah.
So BetDex, so we operate in largely markets such as South America, Asia, parts of Europe, Africa, etc. So we don't actually operate in the US. So we're not necessarily competing against FanDuel, DraftKings of the world, but we are competing against a number of other offshore
Betfair as well.
Yeah. So and Betfair is obviously the biggest one.
Yeah.
The key difference between what we are building and what someone like a Betfair offers is, so BetDex is a sports betting exchange. If you go to the site, it will look like, if you're familiar with the Betfair, it will look quite similar to it.
Yeah.
But the key difference is what we did with our back end. So we open sourced our code, basically the back end, right? And so we put that onto the blockchain, and we called it, and we spun it out into it's a community-owned project. It's called the Monaco Protocol. And so think of that as basically like an on-chain matching algorithm and order book. And it's a permissionless protocol. And so what that means is anyone can go and access that protocol. Anyone can go put liquidity onto it. Anyone can go build their own skins or applications on top. Anyone can plug in directly and trade into it, right? And so BetDex is kind of just this broker into the protocol, right? And the vision for us in the long run is you have this liquidity layer, which is this Monaco protocol, which anyone can access, anyone can put liquidity onto. And BetDex is a broker which brings retail flow in. And then if it could be, you could have other skins on top as well.
Yeah.
And so think of it almost as if you had Betfair, but their API was open and anyone could access it, anyone could put liquidity onto it, right? So that's what we've built, and that's what we think is a bit novel around what we're doing and how it will help us compete.
Yes, it's something new to the market. Yeah.
Yes, it's something new, and like as I say, like the key problem we're trying to solve in sports betting is we believe sports betting should be more similar to similar to the financial markets.
Yeah.
And so specifically what I mean by that is around the liquidity and how fragmented it is. Like we think liquidity should be pooled, right, across the world. And so if you think about it, like when you buy a stock, let's say you buy a share of Apple, whether you use Revolut or you use eToro or Bank of America, the price is the same. When in sports betting, if you're placing a bet on RUD on the French Open, depending on what app you use, the price is going to be quite different. And that's because the liquidity is fragmented, and we want to solve that. So.
Amazing. So in 2021, when you started the BetDex, why an exchange and not a traditional bookmaker? So why exchange?
I think it's because of the problem we're trying to solve, right? The problem we're trying to solve is around the fragmented liquidity. And so an exchange model is more, I would say, it's better suited to that. The other thing I would say is like when we were having been in the industry for a while, like one of the things which really, I think, got at us with some of the really affected us with some of the problems that we saw, especially related to the high fees, right? So fees are insane in sports betting. The VIGs can get quite high, especially compared to like stock trading or even like payment processing or something like that, right? And so from a business model perspective, an exchange is much better suited in order if you were trying to drive down fees and and prices versus a bookmaker type model.
So as a foreign company, you are entering the Brazilian market now, and we are facing the regulation here in Brazil now through the legislations and everything that it's finally going to come through next year. So what are the challenges for you guys to come here to this country in this time with the regulations and everything? Like, it must be so bureaucratical, no?
Yeah, it's quite uncertain, right? I think it's something we think about a lot, and we have to make sure that one, we stay abreast of the legislation and ensure that we are able to continue to operate in Brazil, depending upon how the legislation shakes out. And obviously, like it being in something which is ever changing and not set in stone is just an unknown we have to deal with. I'd say the second thing with this though is you have to remember we're also a startup, right? We're a much smaller company. And so quite often when legislation is made, and I've seen this in the US, I've seen this in the UK and other areas, legislation is made with an eye towards incumbents and an eye towards people who are much larger companies because they're the ones who can afford the license fees, they can pay the tax dollars, all of this, right? And quite often what will happen is sometimes smaller companies are kind of left out of the legislation or thought about as an afterthought. So that's something which we are hoping doesn't happen in Brazil. I would say in the US, if you look at a lot of states, it actually has happened like that. So that's something that we are keeping an eye on as well to ensure that it is economically and financially feasible for a smaller company like us to come in and enter the market and operate there. Third thing I'd say is, as a foreign company, is actually not related to legislation, but it's related to more to localization, right? Ensuring that the product that we have can appeal to the Brazilian consumer and the customer. Like we don't want to just have the same product that we offer to somewhere in Europe to Brazil. Like obviously it's a very different type of market. So that's another challenge as well. That's something that we're keeping an eye on.
So when you come to Brazil, like when a company comes to Brazil, the company needs to pay $5 million for 5 years, basically. So for the license, and that's a lot of money for medium companies and small companies, right?
Yes, it's. I mean, I would even go further to say for some small companies that makes it like impossible to operate, right? Unless you raise a lot of venture capital. Like imagine if you're just a smaller entrepreneur starting off and want to, start your business from scratch, that becomes very, very difficult.
So basically this will create a monopoly here in Brazil if it keeps that way, like because it's a $5 million for a market that is not that huge as Europe, as UK, as USA. And we have a bad currency here, which is the real, which is weak compared to the US dollar, right? So this also plays a factor, right?
Yes, no, it plays a huge factor. I'm hoping legislation changes, shall we say, right? I will say, I mean, I don't mean to be like a fully Debbie Downer. I think I have seen in international markets, even when markets become regulated, sometimes, not all the time, sometimes what you will see is even if the initial legislation is quite unfavorable, it does change over time. Sometimes it will change to allow more startups and smaller companies in, but it does take time.
Yes. So when you say that people try to gain the Brazilian player to make the experience more feasible to them, how do you recognize what Brazilian players want? What is the thought process to understand what Brazilian players want rather than the European players?
You talk to them. right? That's the simplest answer is we make sure we go and actually talk to them. Like I will get on the phone and literally ask them about their betting experience, what apps they're using, what are the payment methods that they are using, what are the type of markets they like to bet on, things like that. So for example, I'll give you like on our site right now, you can use Pix to come in and deposit, right? Which is widespread payment method in Brazil. No one in the US even knows what Pix is. No one in Europe knows what it is, right? So when you're going into a market like that, I think it's really important to ensure that like from the very beginning of the user journey, you're trying to remove any obstacles to ensure that people come in. Second thing is trying to ensure we have the markets that they like to bet on, right? Like so Brazilian players don't, people don't like to bet on tennis, but they really like to bet on football, and ensure that we have all the football leagues, all the prop markets, all the side markets for that market. I would say, I think we have some. We still have a lot of work to do to expand the offering, but we started offering a few Brazilian leagues on the site, so for people to come on bet on. So those are the type of things I think you need to do to really think through before you enter a market. So
yes, football here in Brazil, it's about 90% of the bets or something like that.
yeah.
I mean, it's obvious, like we are the soccer country, we are the football country, so that also reflects on the betting as a general. And but the marketing side of things, when you come to Brazil, how is to marketing your company here in the country?
I'll tell you, it won't be me doing it. It will be someone who will partner with local Brazilian. I would say we will partner with local Brazilian affiliates and agencies to really help spread the word. We want to ensure that what the type of marketing we do is catered towards the market. People understand what our product is. People are able to and have a trustworthy call it a spokesman for the product, if that makes sense. So any marketing that we will do towards Brazil will be localized in nature, and we will be doing it in partnership with folks on the ground who are more experienced in that market than what we might be.
Okay. And when you see the Latin American market as a general, is it really hot? Is really a market that is starting to become a major player or not? Or we still have a lot of ground to gain to become a major player globally?
I think on sports outside of racing, it's a really big player, especially on sports like football, as you mentioned, right? I think it's a huge player. I think on so, and we've seen that like even currently, right? Kind of like pre-legislation, etc. I think what will be interesting to see when legislation occurs is how the market evolves. So if, for example, if you see in the US is a very, I'll call it like a soft market, where with the type of offers that are being put out and the type of, as betting has become legalized, it's a very recreational kind of sports betting, right? Like the type of bets people like to do is go and place a bunch of, the mass market likes to go and place 10-leg parlays, right? Or accumulator bets. If you contrast that with the market like Asia is much more price sensitive, I would say. Like even look at like Asian handicaps, like that is a price sensitive, more type of product. And so I'll be curious to see how the Brazil market evolves once there's a lot more marketing dollars that are put into play by some of the bigger companies, to see how the consumers react and see what type of product that they are really going to be wanting when they have all this marketing dollars, etc., coming after them. So.
Yes, and BetDex does not restrict the accounts, right? Because this is a huge team here in Brazil, because we have a lot of Back365 players, we have a lot of Betano players, we have a lot of players on the book market, that there is a huge topic of restrictions, and BetDex does not restrict the players, right?
Yes, that's correct. We don't restrict any winning players. So you're able to come, you can bet. If you're a winning player, you'll get charged not only will you not get restricted, you will get charged the same fees as a losing player, right? There's no difference in what we offer. So everyone on the platform is charged 3% of net profits in a given market. So yeah, we don't restrict any winning players.
Yes. And Betfair is the major competition, right, for you guys?
Yes.
Globally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
And why is that?
They're the biggest exchange that's out there, right? I think that and their volume doesn't even compare to any other regulated exchange. They're the ones who we are going after. I think that Betfair actually they had such a big opportunity with the exchange, which I think that they over the last 5-10 years they've actually stopped putting money into it. They've been focusing on sending customers to their sports books or to casinos, etc., which are much more higher margin products, and they've, I think, neglected the exchange, both from a customer experience as well as a product perspective. So I think that has left a gap in the market that we hope to go out and attack. Our target market is price-sensitive bettors. We want to go after individuals who care about what the odds are, who care about who want to ensure that they can go and get their bet on without any fuzz, without any restrictions. And I think that there's a market opportunity which out there for that, which Betfair used to have that covered, but now they've left the door wide open as they've started to move towards other products. And so it's an opportunity that I think we can go out and capture.
Yes. I want to go back a little bit about the currency of the countries, about the financial status of the country. So as a CEO of a betting company, when you see a situation like in Argentina right now, which the peso worth 1,000 pesos worth $1, basically the correlation is like that. Is there a huge inflation, 300% a year and something like that? Does those things count when you go to a country, when you go to place your company there?
It does, because one of the things we look at is spend per, like the propensity or the likelihood of, or the propensity of the population to spend on sports betting, like how much. So we look at, how much do they spend? What is their education level of individuals, especially for an exchange product? All of these are things that we look at. What I think is kind of like it was a bit unique about our platform, though, is we accept crypto payments. So what we have seen in a lot of emerging markets, shall we say, where inflation is an issue, is crypto penetration is very high. So a lot of individuals, etc., and I think that this is actually quite possibly due to inflation and not being able to trust what the exchange rate will be, let alone next week, even tomorrow, you might not know how much, your real or pesos might be worth. A lot of individuals end up putting their money into crypto because they think that's more of a safe haven. And they think it actually has more, depending upon the type of crypto, potentially even appreciation potential, right? And so we accept crypto payments, actually predominantly crypto payments. So that actually is one thing. That's a third thing we look at as well, not just education of the population, propensity to spend, but also what is their level of crypto knowledge and how many individuals hold crypto and use that.
Amazing. And education also plays a factor, right? Because the exchanger market is not as popular as the book market. Market. So how do you see, how do you quantify the education factor when you come to your country?
The way, so we will, when we do customer research and customer surveys, we will ask individuals how often they use things like odds comparison sites or match betting sites, right? And what we found is individuals who are using those type of products or those type of channels are more likely to come to a end product like an exchange, or even a more, I would say, like a sharper sportsbook like a Pinnacle or a Circa in the US. So that's how we'll do it, is usually with surveys we'll ask people how do they go and get their bet on? What sites do they use to go and find good bets? Do they even care about the price? Do they not care, etc.? there's always, I think, in every market, there's going to be a huge portion of the population which does not care about the price, just wants to go and place, big bets, etc. But in certain markets, there's a much more a sizable minority of people, even though they account for a lot of the volume, who are restricted, who care about price, who are unable to go and get their bet on, who are getting kicked off of platforms. And that's when kind of the light bulb goes off for us. It's like, okay, this is the market for us. So.
In Brazil, for an example, as a general, we don't care that much about the odds and the difference and all those things that you said. We are a country that just likes to bet on a general behavior. Yeah. So I know that you know that. So a Betfair here has a huge portion of the market, and even the Betfair bettors doesn't take all those things into account. So I have the impression that the Brazilian market is much more dumb, I should say, than the US market or the European market, right?
Yeah, it'll probably be, I would say more recreational, shall we say, than the European market.
It's not the right word. I know.
I like putting, a 5-leg accumulator or 10-leg accumulator once a week as well.
Of course.
But I think the question becomes, is there and I think that actually in any market, even the most established markets, you'll find that in terms of the amount of people betting, more of them will be more recreational, right? But the question becomes, of the people who are not recreational, what portion of the market do they account for? Typically, what you'll see is they will account for a much higher percentage of volume in that market, right? The people who are price sensitive, there's not a lot of them, but they'll account for a much higher portion of volume, right? And so that's what we will look at. And so I would say from what we've seen is, I would agree with everything you were saying, but I think that there is a certain aspect of the market which does care about exchanges and has been underserved currently by Brazil, by the current operators in Brazil, and they are, and you gotta think about they might care about exchanges not because they've been premium charged by Betfair, but they could also care about exchanges because Bet365 has gone and restricted their account. And then they're like, where do I go place a bet? And I'm like, hey, come here, you won't get restricted. Then they might start caring about exchanges.
Yes. We work a lot with Bet365 here, and we have an average about 100 accounts restricted per week here in our...
You really?
Yes. So it's a lot of restricted accounts here on our services, on our leagues, on our models. So this is becoming a huge topic here in Brazil because people are starting to not working with Bet365 due to this problem, because it's restricting a lot on a much faster pace than the other years, and we know why, but this is a problem. And also this is opening a market for other companies, for other bookies, for other exchanges to come here and grab the portion of the market that it's restricted. They cannot bet. Yeah, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's our hope, right? I think what you will see as legislation occurs is companies, there will be an opportunity to go in and capture those, right? And that's exactly who we are going after. But I think with the larger companies that will come in, I'm sure Flutter, DraftKings, all these companies will come in. Those companies will continue to restrict. I don't think they're going to change their business model and not restrict. But I think that just gives even more of an opportunity for folks like us to come in. So
yes. On the global south, Brazil is the biggest market or not? Or who is the biggest market on the global south?
For what sport?
General. Let's say general. On the whole thing, the whole market thing.
It's a hard question to answer because most of the volume is actually, I'd say a lot of the volume is in pre-regulated markets, shall we say. Yeah. But from what we see, I would say cricket gets a ton of volume, and a lot of that comes from India and Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc. Like if you see the volume on Betfair, like you can get like an average cricket match, they get like 100 million pounds matched, right? Which is insane.
Wow.
On the exchange on Betfair. So cricket is cricket is like a super high turnover sport. Actually, like quite low margin though, but very high turnover, especially on live betting. Soccer is obviously really, really big. Football is probably the biggest sport. Racing is big, but it's been having declining volumes. So that's what we would say. I would say in terms of like overall market, if you look at just regulated markets and you look at who is getting a lot of more like recreational volume, the US is probably the fastest growing right now on that side. So.
And you guys have the dollar, so that counts much more than an emerging country that is trying to come to the scene. So
yes,
but Brazil is becoming a major player, right? We can say that.
Yes, 100%. I mean, that's why we're like, for us, some of our largest players come from South America.
Okay, amazing, Varun. So this is an amazing content. So thanks for being here. I know that this is a shorter conversation. This is only 30 minutes, but we had a lot of great answers, and I'm surprised by the cricket thing. I did not know that 100 million pounds or something like that on a cricket match is a lot of things. So for me, it's a new thing. But yeah. So Varun, thanks very much for being here. It's amazing to have you here, a guy like you, CEO of this amazing company that it's BetDex. So place your final comments here and talk us a little bit more of how we can find BetDex online, how we can find on social media, and yes.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you again for having me. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and hopefully we can continue do more of this in the future. If you want to come and find the BetDex, just go to www.betdex.com. You can sign up for the site, you can register, you can play, place your bets. And if you're someone who wants to go and bet and not worry about getting restricted, I think we are the home for you. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us directly. And there's a support chat on the site. You can also on Twitter. We're quite responsive. So our Twitter handle is BetDex Labs is the company handle, and my personal one is SVARUN91. So reach out to either, and we're more than happy to help you. So.
Amazing, Varun. Thank you very much. E é isso, meus queridos, terminando aqui mais um Conversas e Apostas. Espero que vocês tenham gostado. Se inscrevam na BetDex, é uma empresa que está crescendo bastante, uma competidora da Betfair, não vai te restringir, etc. A gente tem esse voto de confiança aqui, é também uma parceira do podcast. Então é isso, espero que tenham gostado. Escrevam nos comentários o que vocês acharam dessa conversa. E, bom, o 12º episódio está gravado aqui. Espero vocês na próxima. Tchau, tchau. Um abraço, meus queridos.